All right, everybody, welcome to Virtual Bourbon. My name is Steve Akley. We have a fun event tonight. We've got one of our signature virtual bourbon events, and that is our Flagship Whiskey, where we have 4 different distilleries, representatives from them coming in to tell us about their company, about their whiskey, about their future, all those type of great things. And of course, leading us on a tasting as well of their signature whiskey. So it should be a really cool event. We've got a great lineup tonight. I'm going to go ahead and introduce everyone. We like to do that first, of course, introduce all, and then we'll talk to them individually. And this is going to be the order. We're going to follow your placemat order. So the order that I will introduce will be the same order that we go, will be also the same order that we're drinking the whiskey, which follows the placemat that came with all of your samples. So with that, I'd like to introduce the team here. Got some people texting. Hopefully they're going to be in here. The Robinsons, a little late logging in. They'll be here though. So, okay. Some people are late, but they'll be here. But all right. With that, I'd like to introduce our first distillery representative from Virginia Distillery in Lovingston, Virginia, Amanda Beckwith. Hey, Amanda, how you doing?
Having me.
Yeah, we are absolutely glad to have you and learn a little bit more about all the great things that you're doing at Virginia Distillery. We keep hearing that name pop up a lot. If you're into social media, it looks like you guys are doing some really great things. So that's really cool. You doing well tonight?
I'm doing great. I think it's one of those travel days because I landed about 48 minutes ago.
Oh, really?
I'm happy to be here. Yeah.
I'm glad everything just worked out tonight for us then. So yes, I'm glad you're here. And your title is lead blender, correct?
Correct.
All right, that should be fun. We'll talk to you about that and much more in just a few minutes, okay? All right, next up, also just getting back in town and literally coming in right in time to come to our event. Very cool. From Uncle Nearest, Victoria Edie Butler, the master blender there out of Shelby, Tennessee. Hey, Victoria, how you doing?
Hey, I'm well. And that's Shelbyville, Tennessee.
Shelbyville. What did I say? I don't
Shelby.
know. Shelby. Oh, Shelbyville. Yes.
Yeah.
That's what's down there. So that's when you said that, you corrected me. My mind was just not working there.
No problem. We're in a little small town, about 50 miles from Nashville.
Gotcha. Yeah. Very cool. And I know that you have a very interesting career in life, and we're going to talk to you about that and how you got in the whiskey business and so much more in just a few minutes. So we'll talk to you soon. Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Next up, from Highwire Distilling Company in Charleston, South Carolina, Scott Blackwell, the owner and distiller for them. Hey, Scott, how you doing?
Good. How are you guys doing?
Doing good as well. Yeah, very exciting to talk to you. And again, all the great things you got going on. And we get to try some of this Jimmy Red bourbon if you're into all these heritage grains like a lot of people are. Jimmy Red is certainly a name that I've heard of. I can't say that I've had any bourbon that has been made with it, though. So I'm looking forward to tasting your product tonight.
Thanks.
All right. We'll talk to you in just a few. Okay.
Sounds good.
And last but not least, from still Austin, obviously Austin, Texas, John Schrepel, the head distiller, and Brandon Joldersma, the COO. Did I say those names right?
Wow, you nailed both of them. That's pretty incredible.
Not bad. That's not how I usually roll, but I got lucky there. So yeah, that's good. Looking forward to talking to you guys and still Austin, another one too, that just, you don't hear of them. And then next thing you know, it's like, boom, they're all over. Kind of a sweetheart on Instagram, which is really cool stuff. People like what you're doing. And hopefully our group here tonight will be able to enjoy some of the whiskey that you've got. And if they haven't tried it before, maybe an opportunity for them to become fans as well. So nice meeting you guys, and look forward to talking to you in just a few. Okay.
Thanks, Steve.
Thank you.
All right. Now what we'll do is we'll circle back to Amanda Beckwith, the lead blender for Virginia Distillery. Amanda, how are you?
I'm doing great. Happy to be here.
Absolutely. So tell us a little bit about yourself, how you got started in this business and all that kind of thing.
Started out, interestingly enough, tasting program for our visitor center. Came on board in and after we set team. And so I started training as much as I could, learning as much as I could. And of course, whiskey takes years to age.
Right.
Time our whiskey was ready to start being blended and, cask selected. That was about the time where I'd been educating the entire team and doing external education as well, and had moved into sensory. So it was just one of those perfect coincidences where the whiskey needed somebody to be heading up the sensory program. And so I moved in back in 2017 into that. And actually, I think John has a fun connection to this person as well. My personal mentor is Nancy Fraley.
Okay.
And she's been an incredible mentor along the way. And she was the one who first said, hey, Amanda should be a master blender. And she's been inspiring me and giving me great insights ever since.
Well, that is really cool. Of course, I think most of us know Nancy Fraley. This is what you find is, especially when we get the Q&A at the end, a very experienced group here. And of course, Nancy is certainly well thought of. And the batch that we're going to be trying tonight is the Nancy Fraley batch. So that's kind of cool too. How about that? So tell us a little bit about Virginia Distillery. When did the company get started and those sort of things?
We first were founded in 2011, but
Okay.
it took years of getting everything together. And we do things very old school. So amazing companies today, we are not making bourbon. We have a fun tie to bourbon. We're all about American single malt. So that's the only style of whiskey. And we turned our stills on in November 2015, and we've been aging our whiskey since then. And the really great thing about it is we're the largest independently owned American single malt producer. So Virginia has some, Kentucky, no, they actually came from Kentucky. Wasn't even a state. It was part of the Virginia, Tennessee land group. And so it's just really nice to be able to say, hey, we've got a lot of history for whiskey making. Case the single malt style now that we have more resources in hand to do.
Yeah.
Ask what a mash bill is. 100% malted barley.
100% malted barley. Okay. Okay. And do you guys do any sort of, experiments and things like that? Or, or is that just going to be your identity is that 100% single malt barley?
Well, that's what we want to do. So where we get to is the type of barley itself. We always stick with 2-row spring barley, but we work with 300 plus farmers to source the barley. So of course there are different types that we can do within that 2-row spring barley window. And then of course we get to be playful there, but even experiments we can do with the casks we age our whiskey in. By law, bourbon has to age in new charred oak, but the American single malt category, which is just now being finally defined, the TTB, doesn't have that restriction. So we, in fact, the whiskey aging in my cask houses is in used bourbon barrels. So it's a really great foundation to start with. But then I also use sherry casks, cuvee wine casks. I get to have a lot of fun with the barrels.
Mm-hmm. Tell us a little bit about your philosophy of doing a blend. Of course, we just are coming off a contest that we do yearly now. This was the second time that we've done it. So now we can say it's an annual thing. And we have a challenge where we send out, we partner with the distillery partners to send out specific, types of whiskey, a corn whiskey, they send out, wheat whiskey, whatever it is. And then the group gets 200 milliliter bottles of these different types of whiskey. And then they're challenged to blend them together. The only thing they can add is water. And then we judge them to figure out which one's the best. So we do put a pro in there too. That's kind of the fun twist. But I'm always interested when I talk to someone who blends for a living, how you do that. Are you, as you taste individual whiskeys in your mind, is there's a profile that you then think that you can blend to, or you just sit there blending, and then you just keep doing it till it gets better and better and better. And then when that point of diminishing returns is when you stop. How do you do the blending thing?
I love that you guys do that. It's one of the tricks we've learned is consistency. So we're always looking for, my idea of a good whiskey is something complex and layered. So the tricks I've picked up along the way, one of which is once I have a profile I like, from batch to batch, I'll always retain a little bit of that first to use as almost like a starter, and then a comparison as I'm blending along the way. So that's been really helpful. We do have a bit of a recipe for our flagship whiskey, Courage and Conviction. You can see the blue tin behind me, and that's what we're going to be tasting now. So it's, of course, water, yeast, and barley. That's it. Double distilled in copper pot stills, and aged for, and now at least 4 years. But the barrel recipe for the flagship is roughly, it changes a little bit batch to batch, 50% whiskey aged in former bourbon barrels, 25% whiskey aged in Fino, Oloroso, and PX, or Pedro Jimenez sherry casks from Spain, and also 25% whiskey from cuvee wine casks that come from Portugal and Spain.
Oh, very nice. One of the questions too that our group always likes to ask is, where are your whiskeys available? And also the second question would be, is it available online?
Yes. Yeah, we were finally allowed to do direct-to-consumer shipping within the state of Virginia back in April of 2020. But the
Okay.
good news is we've started to partner with online retailers. So Mash and Grape is one, but we're available in 40 plus states online. So you can just ship directly to your home. If you go to our website, vadistillery.com, there's also a whiskey finder. So you can plug in your zip code and see what other stores, actually physical stores in your area, might have it. So you have two options if you want to go drive a little ways or hopefully not too far, or if you want it shipped to your home, both work.
Oh, nice. So tell us a little bit about, the consumers that you're looking for, because American single malts is a little bit, like you said, a different category, very different than probably, we're pretty much bourbon focused on all the things that we do. We are, our podcasts and things like that are bourbon focused, but, are you looking for, Scotch drinkers that you're looking to convert to American single malts? Are you looking for bourbon drinkers that kind of want to explore different things, or, just whiskey drinkers in general?
I would say whiskey drinkers in general, people who are curious or want to stretch their legs a little bit. We have a really nice bridge between Scotch and bourbon. And so my thought is it's a little bit of an education piece. So if people are stuck on only drinking Scotches, well, they might be missing out on some beautiful American whiskeys. And if they're only comfortable with the single malt world, maybe we can bridge them over to fall in love with bourbons. And even vice versa, because again, we have that tie with the used bourbon casks and being made in America, and showing off the Virginia climate is really fun. Again, being a bourbon, you can be made anywhere in the United States, and it's a pretty big country. So you guys have experienced firsthand just the variety. But again, sometimes the new oak can overwhelm or dominate more subtle grains. So rye, corn, they're a little bit better built, I think, to work with new charred oak. Barley is more delicate, which I really love. I like the malty character. I like the esters from fermentation still being able to show through. And so thus having used oak works really well for us. And I think that speaks to the Scotch drinkers as well. But world whiskey lovers, I mean, that's a really fun category to tap into, because I mean, there are so many good whiskeys all over.
Of course, as I mentioned before, kind of a bunch of whiskey geeks here. And so we like to talk about the equipment. What do you use to distill? Pot still, column still, what size column, if it's a column, all those, they love that kind of stuff. What do you got?
Yeah. Well, we copper pot is very different from bourbon making. We take the barley, we run it through a Bobby mill, which is, ours is 101 years old, which is kind of fun.
Yeah,
so we mill
cool.
it to get the enzymes ready. We have a mash tun. So we add the hot water, we extract all the sugar we can from the grain, and that sugary water moves into fermentation tanks, and that's where we pitch the yeast. So we have what's known as spent grain or draft, and we can give that away. And then we make beer. So we have these massive, actually they're about the size of 10,000 liters or 2,600 gallons. I can do math.
Okay.
And that's where we add these gobbles up the sugar over 72 hours. And if you're a beer fan, imagine something like a Saison or Belgian, no hops. But it's malty, it's floral, it's fruity, it's all these beautiful. And then we double distill. So we have this one copper pot still that's known as our wash still. So what's an 8% beer goes in and comes out at 20 to 38% ABV.
Wow.
And a slightly smaller copper still. And this time we can get as high as 78% ABV. We make our cuts. The clear hearts go into a bulk spirit receiver, or BSR as we call it. We add water to get it down to 62.5% ABV, and then we fill the barrels.
Okay. Last question before we taste some whiskey. Of course, we're talking about people here that like to travel, go visit distilleries. What's the experience like if they would go to Virginia Distillery?
Well, things have been a little different over the second half of 2020 and 2021, but we are doing tours on Fridays still. So
Okay.
if you want to come for curbside pickup, you can do that Monday through Friday. But on Fridays from 1 to 4, we do offer tours. I would check our website, make sure it's not closed for something like, the holidays. But we love having people on site, and we will walk you through a little museum, and then you go through the distillery itself. You can pop into our bottling house, which is really fun, and taste a little neat fight of the whiskeys.
Nice. All right. Well, it is time to drink. So if you haven't done so already, go ahead and definitely do that first pour there from Virginia Distillery. And we like to have the group share in via the chat function here. Their nosing notes first and then their tasting notes. But as they're starting to nose that whiskey and things like that, Victoria, excuse me, Amanda, I'm sorry.
That's all right.
If you don't mind, tell us a little bit about what we should anticipate as we're getting ready to nose and taste this whiskey.
So I definitely see these bourbon casks as a foundation. So like vanillins, orange oils, cedar, I completely agree. The fermentation notes will still come through. So apricot, peach should be in there. And it goes a little bit more decadent with the fruit notes. So it's balanced out, but you will get some deeper red fruit notes, even some plum, butterscotch in there. And then my favorite casks, which I haven't really talked about yet, are those cuvee casks. And one of my other mentors was Dr. Jim Swan, and he started a couple distilleries, one of which was Cavalon in Taiwan. And they were all set to do used bourbon barrels, but they were beat out on their big order by Speyside. Oh, I love Tim. He's got it right there. He knows all about Cavalon. So Jim said, well, I have friends in Spain and Portugal. I'm going to see if we can create our own cask type. So in their first life, these barrels held a premium red wine blend. That first run is sometimes called the cuvee run. So there's our tie into the name. But what happens is after the red wine is taken out, we shave the inside stage, just 3 to 5 millimeters, toast with indirect heat, blast with a char, just very quick, low char, and then we move our whiskey in. So this whole process is known in the industry as STR, for shave, toast, char, repair. And if you're nosing and then tasting this whiskey and you get raspberry, dried cherries, blood orange, chopped toast, typical are ones that I get from those casks. So they're my favorite barrel. Those are notes that I just adore. And yeah, now I'm curious to hear more of your thoughts because I was enjoying those.
Yeah, we're good. I like the homemade Polish sweetbread that Carrie said there.
Yeah.
That's good. Grape, ginger ale, Chablis, peach, toast, chamomile and honey. Yeah, all good stuff for sure. Well,
I love food, so I'm always thinking about food pairings,
right.
and that's something that inspires this. And this is a whiskey that will open up over an hour. So if you have multiple glasses and want to set it aside and come back to it, I find that the chocolate really evolves after several minutes. It's 92 proof, which is the lowest ABV of all the ones tonight, but usually it's one of the higher ones. So yeah, if you want to add a drop or two of water to open it up, you'll get more vanillins from it then.
Okay, very cool. Well, cheers, gang. Let's give this thing a taste and see what we got.
Really good, Amanda. Great job.
Thank you.
Delicious. I'm a huge single malt person, so love it. Love it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. What are we thinking on the taste there? What are we thinking? It's definitely gets grape notes for sure. I definitely get that in this one.
Definitely very fruit forward for sure.
Fruit forward, yes, absolutely.
Very fruit forward.
Mm-hmm.
Something really unique about single malt is it gives you a sense of place, and the Virginia climate is extreme. So for those who like Scottish single malts, I mean, if you've been there, we have the running joke. It doesn't matter if you go to Scotland in January or July, you can pack the same suitcase. It's usually about 45 degrees Fahrenheit in the Highlands. And it can be 1 degree variance in 24 hours. So not true for Virginia. In hot weather, of course, barrel staves expand and soak up the spirit. Cold weather, they contract and push it back out. So if you're in Scotland, that's like spring, summer, fall, winter. But right now, it's going to be 25 degrees here tonight, and then probably up to 80 tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.
So we're having multiple, and our barrels have seen a high of 108 and lows of -6. So they get a workout, a lot more color and flavor very naturally. But I'm curious if you guys want to guess evaporation rates, what the Angel share is in a year here.
Angel share in a year.
Yeah, it's 1% in Scotland, typically in a year. So twice as much, 3 times as much.
I feel like this is a trick question, but with the sure swing, I don't know, like
Tim's saying 5%.
6 to 8%.
Yeah.
6 to 8. Yeah. I've had 12% or more in a couple barrels, which is heartbreaking. So we have a motto. We let the whiskey tell us when it's ready. And yeah, we've seen some as low as 3 or 4% in a year. But typically, 6 to 8.
Yeah, this is very good. We're off to a great start. It has a nice finish too. It's warm. It kind of stays right on the palate, a little spiciness there at the end. So it's really
Ginger
good.
cookie.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, Amanda, thank you so much. And please stick around. We do have an open Q&A at the end where we bring everybody back, let them open up their mics and ask questions. Okay.
Sounds great.
All right. Next up, we're going to be talking to Victoria from Uncle Nearest. Hey, Victoria, how you doing?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm doing well as well. Very excited to talk to you. Obviously, when you're talking about Uncle Nearest, it has been amazing to see the explosion of growth, the fact that you go from a source brand and now you have your own distillery and winning so many awards. So what a ride this has been, right?
Oh, absolutely. It's been wonderful.
Yeah. Yeah, it's been fun to see from the outside. We'll talk all about that in just a second. I want to talk about you on a personal basis to kick this thing off. So you are related, a family member of Nearest Green, correct?
I am his great-great-granddaughter.
Wow, that is so cool to be able to bring that family history to the brand. It's really almost unbelievable, right? I mean,
Oh yeah, yes, it is. After his legacy lay dormant for more than 160 plus years, it is a huge responsibility and certainly an honor to pick up the legacy and continue it on.
yeah. Yeah. So, and of course, for the family, you're talking about, it kind of laid dormant within the family. It was not though. The Green family always talked about it, correct?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I've known my whole life, as well as, the rest of my family. My grandmother, who is Nearest Green's granddaughter, made sure that we all knew, and not just about Nearest, but all of our relatives, that came before us. So
Yeah.
we've always known, I've known my whole life that Nearest Green was the once enslaved man who taught Jack Daniel how to distill and became the first known African-American master distiller. But for whatever reason, that information never really left the city limits of Lynchburg.
Yeah.
Till a few years ago.
Yeah. Yeah. Obviously, Fawn Weaver has done just an amazing job of getting the story out and just bringing history to life. I mean, it's just so neat to think about.
Yes, Fawn Weaver, our CEO and founder, is a phenomenal woman, extremely talented, definitely connected to the family. Her thought process is family first, and she certainly has done a good job at keeping the family first. When she launched this brand in 2017, it happened really quickly. When she arrived in Tennessee in 2016, it was not with the thought of making whiskey. Fawn's background is in writing. She is a New York Times bestselling author. Yep. She's a serial entrepreneur, but whiskey was not on the agenda. It happened that way. People ask her as well as they ask me, why, how did this happen? And there are things in life that choose you. And I'm thankful that Fawn was in the right place at the right time to see the New York Times article that was written by Clay Risen that sparked her interest and led her to Lynchburg, Tennessee in 2016. Soon thereafter, of course, she started meeting descendants of Jack and, of course, Nearest Green's descendants and all the townspeople of Lynchburg. Right. And that, just from there to starting to put Nearest's legacy together, his history, his story, led her to launch this brand.
Yeah. And, entrepreneurs are always fascinating individuals because she's out of California and moves to Lynchburg, Tennessee. And again, to just kind of, again, start researching at first. And ultimately, like I said, the dream kind of finds her. But, amazing to kind of just put your whole life aside and just start this journey. And it's been, great to watch. She's been on our show, The Bourbon Show, early on. So if anybody here wants to hear an early interview with Fawn Weaver, we did so on the Bourbon Show. I don't know. I want to say 2018-ish, 2019. I'm not sure, but it's been a while ago. And that's interesting to compare to where they're at today. So definitely check that out. It's on our website, please.
Yeah, we are from the time we launched in July of 2017. We have become the fastest growing American spirit in history. Mm-hmm. We are the most awarded whiskey or bourbon for 2019, 2020, and soon to be 2021.
Yeah, absolutely. That's cool. Tell us a little bit about your personal story, because you were in law enforcement, right?
I was. I worked for the Department of Justice. The Regional Organized Crime Information Center was my home for almost 31 years. And my job for the better part of my career there was to oversee the analytical division of that organization.
Mhm.
And we had analysts and criminal intelligence analysts and forensic analysts in that area. So I saw a lot in 31 years, made some wonderful friends. I think did some good work. My job then was extremely, it was important. I think what we did and what they continue to do there, it is in an effort to make our community safer. And so I am proud that I was a part of such a wonderful organization for almost 31 years.
Yeah. And then tell us about your journey after that. So, to get to where you're at today, being a master blender for Uncle Nearest.
So I joined the team shortly after retiring, just days after retiring. Of course, I knew I was coming to the team before I retired, but I came in the role as a director of administration. Before our brand launch, Fawn had other initiatives already in the works, one of which is the Nearest Green Foundation. And that foundation was put into place to support Nearest's college age descendants who had a desire to continue their education. And one of my responsibilities coming in was to oversee that portion of our company. And so that was in March, the 1st of March. In May, Fawn asked me to curate the first batch of 1884. Naturally, I was nervous about doing that because I hadn't done anything like that before. I hadn't even considered it. Now, I had played in cocktails for years, and I loved whiskey, but I had never blended any whiskey. And so even before she asked the question, I had already started reading as much as I could, trying to learn as much as I could about the spirits industry as a whole, because I wanted to at least be able to speak intelligently, now being a part of that community. And so I continued my research after she asked the question, and in May, I curated the first batch, and in July, 1884 small batch hit the market. And right out the gate, we started winning awards with it. And so she asked me to curate the second batch. I did, and I have curated, blended every batch since. We have won numerous awards, international blind taste tests and national awards. And in November, I think it was November of 2019, I was elevated to Master Blender. And this past February, I had the good fortune of being named Master Blender of the Year by Whiskey Magazine.
Wow. Congrats on that. That's
Thank you.
big. That's huge. So yeah, that's very exciting. So tell us a little bit about your philosophy on blending. We talked with Amanda about that, and it's always, again, just a personal fascination for me, because that's a tough gig. Blender is not easy. So tell us a little bit about how you do this.
Well, I'm unconventional. In fact, our whole team, we are unconventional. We do things a little bit different, and it works for us. For me, I didn't go in the first time with any preconceived notion about how I wanted it to taste. My main thought was that the finish be good. And so I think I succeeded in doing that, and have continued to succeed in doing that with every batch that we have put on the market. Now, I am like Amanda, I like consistency. Of course, with a small batch, that is not a standard. It doesn't have to be. Also, with most blenders, they sample and spit it out. I do not. I swallow every
Hey-oh.
sample. So that is the aspect, and we are a little bit unconventional away from the spirits industry. But it works for me because again, I have a strong thought about the finish.
Right.
And my thinking is, if you spit it out, how do you know what the finish is tasting like? So you have to give it a chew, let it resonate on your palate, and then swallow in order to know what the finish will be. And so that works for me, regardless if I am doing sampling 10 or 30, if it takes me 4 hours or 10 hours, that is what I do. When I blend, that is my day. I don't add anything else to the day. And thankfully, it has been successful. It continues to be successful for our team. And I won't change anything unless things change in the market,
Yeah. So a couple of questions again, because we're just a bunch of whiskey geeks. We love hearing about the equipment that you use. So tell us what your setup is at Uncle Nearest.
Well, we are still sourcing. Our youngest whiskey on the market is 7 years old, and we are only 4 years old. So we are still sourcing our whiskey, and then we put our own touch up on it. One being the Lincoln County process, the process of filtering whiskey through sugar maple charcoal. That is the process that my great-great-grandfather Nearest Green helped perfect in 1856. In 2013, the governor of Tennessee signed into law, any whiskey designed to be Tennessee whiskey must adhere to all of the qualifications needed for bourbon, plus the Lincoln County process. And so that process sets Tennessee whiskey apart from any other spirit.
Yes. Yeah. Plus being made in Tennessee.
And it has to be made in
that would be the other one. Yeah.
It has to be made in Tennessee.
Yes. And so tell us what it's like. You got the new distillery. Tell us about what it's like visiting that.
My goodness. So when Fawn purchased it, when we purchased the distillery, it was 270 beautiful acres there in Shelbyville, Tennessee. About a month and a half or so ago, we purchased some additional acreage, and we are now at 313 acres, just a little bit over 313. So we are building out the longest bar in the world. We had hoped to be finished by now, but the pandemic has slowed everything, as I'm sure all of you guys know. We have the world's first non-alcoholic speakeasy at the Nearest Green Distillery. We are sitting on a former walking horse farm, and we have tried very hard, and I think have been successful in maintaining the beauty of that farm, being that it's a horse farm. We still have horses on the property, and it's absolutely beautiful. Our welcome center is stunning. When you start the tour there at the speakeasy, and it's just something for everyone there, whether you drink whiskey, which most do, but even if you don't, our space is filled with history. We honor the women's suffrage and the women's march and strides to get the women's voting rights passed. So it's a lot of history at the Nearest Green Distillery. We honor all things Tennessee: food, beverage, NASCAR, the walking horse, but of course, Nearest Green is the highlight. Absolutely.
Well, let's go ahead and get a pour. If you haven't done so already, go ahead and pour that one out. And
so we are sipping Uncle Nearest 1884 small batch. 1884 signifies the year that Nearest Green last put whiskey in a barrel. This is a 7-year-old blend, 93 proof. And cheers. I'll let you guys tell me what you think.
Tell us what you guys got on the nose here. That'll be how we'll start out. And it's nice and sweet on the nose, definitely. Caramel, tobacco, black cherries. Yeah. I'm getting all that.
Mhm.
A little citrusy too, almost like an old fashioned a little bit. Apple, light honey, some oak.
I agree with all that Ed is saying.
Ed's on it. Mr. Bourbon obsessed himself.
Baked apple, I've heard that one before and agreed. Yeah.
Mhm. So it's definitely some good ones coming in.
So what do you think on your palate?
Let's do the old cheers and let's
Yeah.
give this one a try, gang.
Yes.
Oh, that is good. That is very good. Again, kind of sweet up front, transitions to more leathery, kind of like a pipe smoking, kind of a sweet smoke. Very, very good.
You pick up a
Let's
little
see.
bit of spiciness there on the end.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Oh,
cedar
thank
apricot.
you.
Tastes like a winner. More awards coming. You just got the Tim Swyatt Award right there.
I'm good with that.
Tim came in second in our blending contest, by the way. So he was our second place finisher, which is cool. Other tastes there. Mr. Bill likes it. That's a gold star review because Mr. Bill famously either doesn't like things or likes them. That's his tasting notes. And
Thank you, Mr. Bill.
It's I like it with 3 exclamation points, Victoria. That's really
Yay.
good.
Yay.
You can tell by the exclamation points the level of enthusiasm with Mr. Bill.
Thank you
that's
so
good.
much.
Mhm, mhm. He's not a tasting.
So is the finish, what do you think about the finish? Was I successful in getting a good finish?
Yes, you were. Absolutely. It stays with you. It continues, even the flavor continues to evolve a little bit after you've swallowed the whiskey, which is very, very neat. I like it a lot. Very good. And of course, this is available. Uncle Nearest, it seems like it's everywhere. Is it in all 50 states at this point?
We are
Victoria, or
in
not?
all 50 states and 12 countries.
Okay, very good. Very good. So yeah, so it's out there. So that makes it easier for anybody to find. It should be at your
Well, it's not easy right now. Like most, we are experiencing some inventory issues due to bottles and corks, all that good stuff.
Mhm.
But it's coming back around, and hopefully if you go to the unclenears.com and go to our locator and put in your address, it will populate those restaurants, bars, beverage stores that are closest to you, and you will be able to get it there. You can also have it shipped to you in those states that it's where it's permissible. It is still not permissible in all. So those states that allow the shipment of whiskey, you can have it shipped to your home.
Yeah. Tim is referring to the finish as a Tennessee tuck. It's warm and cozy. Is he doing a bit now? I don't know. I don't know what's going on with him. I think Tim's he's trying to be the first bourbon comedian ever. It's actually pretty good. It's pretty clever, but yeah, real good. Victoria, again, thanks so much for joining us today. Glad to have you on this event and really happy to be tasting some of your whiskey and introducing it to folks that may have not had it before. So please stick around and we'll bring you back at the end when we have our live Q&A. Okay.
Thank you so much. Absolutely.
All right. Next up from Highwire Distilling Company in Charleston, South Carolina is Scott Blackwell. Hey, Scott, how you doing?
Good.
Good. And you are the owner and distiller. So you do all the stuff, right? There's probably no job in the distillery you don't have to do at some point, right?
Yeah, it sounds really important. But the reality is there's not too many of us at the distillery. My wife I'm actually the co-founder. My wife, Ann, is also neck deep in day-to-day as well. And we just sort of divide and conquer. But yeah, I'm mostly focused on everything from the distilling, fermentation, grain, farm relationships, and then blending. So we kind of do it. Yeah.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about, I don't know, I guess maybe your career before, because what did you do before you got owned a distillery?
So I don't want to take up too much time with all that stuff, but
Well, you can give us the high profile,
I'll
or
give
you don't have to
quick
talk
and
about it all
dirty,
here.
yeah. I'll give you there's not a hook here to pull me off so if I go a little
Oh,
long.
I'm good at that. Believe me, you'd be surprised. You don't think there's a hook there. You'd be surprised.
So I grew up here in South Carolina and started out in the restaurant business, doing what you do when you start, washing dishes and things like that, and then did that all through till college, and then started a business out of necessity while I was in school, making desserts for restaurants out of my apartment. And then that's sort of where the bug bit me of being self-employed. I was 19 at the time, and then when I got out of school, I was actually making more money than my friends that had quote unquote real jobs.
Yeah.
So I decided to stick with that. And then got hooked up with an ice cream company out of Vermont called Ben and Jerry's. And
I've heard
that
of
was
them.
in the 80s. You've probably heard of those guys.
Yeah.
And was with them, lucky enough to be with them early on. I brought them to the Carolinas and was their distributor here in the area. And then
See, that's cool.
I'm fast forwarding very fast.
Yeah,
here.
that's good.
Then
That's good.
I ended up selling off a good portion of that company, and then moved to Columbia and opened a restaurant. And it was a natural food kind of restaurant, kind of funky. Did a lot of vegetarian stuff, and then I got really interested in coffee while I had that, and turned the basement into a coffee shop. Became a roaster, the first roaster in South Carolina. Started roasting coffee. Got really obsessed with sort of the terroir of beans and the flavor. How you could take one varietal of Costa Rican coffee, 4 completely different flavors out of the same region even. And then
that's why I don't understand people who are bourbon drinkers who don't like coffee. To me, there's this natural connection. I think there's just so many similarities for stuff like that, but there's just people.
I mean, I think tea is similar too. I mean, I think tea, when you dig into teas, really, I mean, I got into tea for quite a while there as well. But with coffee, I was doing baked goods. So I had scones, biscotti, cookies, brownies, things like that. And more people wanted to buy my baked goods than did my coffee. I mean, as far as wholesale.
Yeah.
I sort of thought, what, maybe I'll sell the restaurant. I'm kind of tired of doing that, and focus on the coffee and baked goods. So I broke the coffee and bakery out, and in about 5 years into that, I sold the coffee business off in that new venture, and then focused on the baked goods. So we did dough, because what I realized was there was, after we've all had a 2-day-old cookie. They're not as good as when they're fresh. So the wow was really when they came out of the oven. So we were doing dough to a lot of our wholesale accounts, and we just ultimately ended up shrinking those sizes. We had pancake size cookies.
Yeah.
We just shrunk them down to where they were, like a $50, and basically just did exactly what Nestle and Pillsbury did, but organic and natural ingredients.
Yeah.
And that was called Immaculate Baking. So if you go to Whole Foods or places, look in the back refrigerated area, you'll still see that dough, with my name on the back of it, but we don't own it anymore. General Mills bought that in 2012.
Wow.
So while I was, once we were growing very quickly with that business, and we ended up taking an investment. And with that, investors want to ultimately make their money back, so we knew the writing was on the wall, and we knew, okay, what's next? We're not going to be able to retire. And also, I wasn't that old, wasn't wanting to retire. So we started thinking about what was next, and we were brewing beer at our house. And I was, doing like I do. I was getting more and more obsessed and ended up buying more and more homebrew equipment and kind of sneaking it the back door. And my wife is like, I love you, but beer kind of scares me. There's a lot of breweries, and what do you think about spirits, making spirits? And I'm like, we don't know anything about that. I was, kind of temper tantrum. I didn't know anything about roasting coffee when I got into it. So, I didn't know anything about making pies really when I started that. So ultimately, there were about 200 distilleries in the country at that point, and we flew out to Oregon, where there was a concentration of about 12 in downtown in Portland. And about the third distillery we walked into was House Spirits. And there was this guy named Christian Krogstad there who was making aviation gin. And he said, you should listen to your wife. You should do spirits. You will dig it. It's a fun business. And he had some single malt there that he was making. He had been a brewer, and that really intrigued me, the whole idea, because of my baking and brewing. I understood, kind of that malt, and got really intrigued with what he was saying. And ultimately I said, if you'll point us in a couple of right directions, that would be really cool. It would be fun to do this. So we picked up and signed a lease on a building in downtown Charleston. And 2 months after we sold our bakery, we started construction on our now previous location on King Street. So we bought a 2,000 liter Cota still. It was a pot with a small 6-plate hybrid type still. Dave Pickerel, we hired him to come in and work with us for the week, basically to just show us how to turn the still on and because we had never distilled anything. And ultimately he, I just sat there and drilled him about fermentation and milling texture, size, and barrels, and why use this barrel over that barrel, everything and then, the technical stuff. So that's ultimately how we ended up starting off. And that was September of 13. So we're 8 years old now. And what really dawned on me, especially that first few distillation is that and there again, this seems like common sense, but kind of what you put into the still, you get out of the still. So it's not just clear, it's clear. It's anybody who's ever, you guys have all been to distilleries. It's pretty boring watching that clear stuff come out of those. it trickles out, and it's just like watching water boil, but the flavor is where it is really, really cool and where it gets exciting. And that year we had pressed some sugar cane and made an agricole style rum from that. And that was really where the light bulb went on, where we were, tasting this fresh cane juice with all this wild yeast and kind of exotic, banana and grass. And then, the distillation was, kind of, fermentation was super funky, and the distillation was equally funky. And that was kind of like, okay, we need to dig into the ingredients even more. There's something here, and thinking more culinarily,
right,
I think is where we sort of shined. And if you want to interrupt me and ask another question, I'll just keep going.
The Jimmy Red. So obviously this is part of what you're talking about here. So tell us how you came across that grain, how long you've been working with it, and why you like it.
So I knew, making agricole style rum, or playing around with heirloom white corn or heirloom yellow corn. I was like, what does that mean exactly? I mean, I knew what heirloom was, but why that specific corn? Why is that one better than this one? And I said, there is a difference in flavor when you start with this white corn or this yellow corn. The flavor comes out different. So I was wondering what other corns were out there. And we just happened to be lucky enough to have a guy named Glenn Roberts who owns Anson Mills here in South Carolina. And Glenn, basically I said, I know we want to make bourbon. 51% of bourbon is corn. I need to learn corn. I need to learn about, the base of this. So I met him down at Clemson at the research center at the farm they have south of town here. And he had about, 80 bags of corn on a table. And he's going through all these corns and he's telling me about this one makes really great grits and this one makes great cornbread and this one is really good for, porridge or this or that and, tortillas, etc. And I said, well, what about that one in the middle, that one? And he goes, oh, that Jimmy Red. Yeah, James Allen Red. That's the one you want. And I was like, well, why'd you tell me about all this?
Right.
So, he was, that's Glenn. And so he said, that's the one you need to grow. And I said, well, that's cool. Well, how much, he goes, how much corn would you need? And I said, yeah, like 1,000 pounds ideally. And he goes, doesn't exist. You're going to have to grow it. And this guy here at Clemson will grow it, but you'll have to write him a check for a grant to grow it for you. And it's going to be a big check. And I mean, and I was like, oh, okay. Cause we're already over budget and
right.
All this. So Ann was not with me at that meeting. I get back and she says, well, how did the meeting go? And I said, it went really well. I think we're going to do this. He says, we're going to have to write a big check though, to Clemson for this, to him to grow it. And she goes, how much? And I said, I have no idea, but I think we need to do it. I think we just need to just trust this guy and dig in. And I'm not a farmer. Ann grew up around farms. Her family are a bunch of farmers. And, here I was going down to the farm every week. I watched the seed go in the ground and they would laugh at me because I would show up and I would inevitably forget my shoes. And I'd be in flip-flops out there in the field and inevitably I'd step in a fire ant pile or whatever. But I was trying to run behind the tractor and take photos of the seeds going in the ground. And then I watched them come up as little germs. And then, we went out and watched the whole process. But at the meantime, I'm laying awake at night, staring at the ceiling thinking, I hope this guy's right about this corn.
Right.
And ultimately we got it out of the field. It's a 110-day crop. It grows to about 10 to 12 feet tall. It's, it doesn't yield what, number 2 yellow dent corn does. But we decided to mash and distill a 100% Jimmy Red because we wanted to just see what that tasted like before we decided what flavoring grain we would put with it. Well, we put it in the mash and it's this deep magenta color, and then it comes out in the fermenter, and we use jacketed fermenters. So they're stainless. So we ferment for about a week. So we're about 80 degrees. So we're a little lower on our fermentation temperatures. But the next day we came in and there's this really thick oil cap, and we had just, fermented, like I say, heirloom white and yellow corn, and had not seen that same kind of mash or fermentation. So we were really, that piqued our interest. And then when it went through the still, it had this viscosity to it that the yellow and the white corn didn't have. And it also didn't taste necessarily what I would call corny or cobby. It didn't have that like hot corn cobby kind of flavor. And the oil in that distillate really, I think, makes it drink a little richer and a little oilier. Nice. And a little
let's give this a taste then. Let's see, what we got here. So everyone, if you go ahead and nose this, and Scott, you can tell us a little bit about what we can anticipate here as we nose and then taste this. But share your nosing notes here, folks. Be a good time to do that.
So this is, I think, batch 21, and like Victoria said earlier, every batch is a little different because we're a small batch. I mean, it truly is. Our blends are 5 to 7 barrels, and these were distilled probably about 3 years ago. So guess what? We've gotten better in 3 years. So the stuff, so we're always kind of critiquing and criticizing. And, I'm like Victoria, I'm big on the finish. I don't like a super oaky, oak bomb type finish. We tend to our barrel entry proof is never above 110. It's hot here. I mean, if you've ever been to Charleston, it's like subtropical, and in summertime it's swampy. But we end up getting a lot of spice notes, brown sugar. Graham is another one that we'll pick up on. There's a sweetness, but I call it like an earthy sweetness or like a honey sweetness. There's some minerality. Those are sort of the common flavors. And then occasionally we'll get some like kind of prune or dried, kind of.
Yeah, I could see that.
Yeah.
You're getting some good notes coming in. A lot of stuff from the baking aisle here. Cherry Danish, Kringle, pecan rolls, tiramisu, buttered honey, corn. Bread.
Yeah, and it's a and this is 100% Jimmy Red. So there's no wheat or there's no flavoring grain. And so there's a lot of folks that think there's wheat or rye in here. And the reason is there's some spice notes, and then there's some of that doughiness or what you would get from wheat. A friend of ours is Julian Van Winkle, and he tasted he tasted some of our Jimmy Red early on. We were staying with them at an event on the circuit at one point, and he got me to send him some of our White Dog, and he tried it and said, "Is there wheat or rye in here?" And I said, "No, it's 100% corn." And he was like, "Are you sure?" And I'm like, "Yes, I'm sure we make it, whatever." And so so ever since then, he said, this corn you've changed my thinking about corn. And then there again, we feel like we've done deeper dives. We into corn. Ann and I went to Oaxaca in 19 with Glenn Roberts on a maize and wheat research trip, and basically dug into. So there's other stuff in barrels. You were asking about experimentation earlier.
Yeah.
We've got a boatload of things in the back. So if you ever come to the distillery, that's where you can see it all.
We'll definitely get there. I'm getting some of the notes here that are out there. The brown sugar, I would say cherry brown sugar is what I'm getting. Burnt caramel, pear, baking spices, wintergreen, very flavorful. They're noting that. We need to connect them with Gary from Woodhat. Yes, if you're into corn, we've got the guy for you. Definitely got to talk to Gary from Woodhat Spirits. Yeah, he's crazy into that stuff for sure.
Awesome.
I'm going to come visit you.
Do it. I'd love to see you. Fawn's been to our house, actually.
Yeah, I know.
Very nice.
I'm jealous. I'm coming to visit.
All right. You guys, I'm going to count on it.
All righty.
This is some really good stuff you've got here. I love it. It's a great mouthfeel going on there. Finish is good. Sticks with you. I like what you got going on, Scott.
Thank you.
Well, thank you so much for joining us today. And please, like I said, I've been telling everybody else, stick around. We'll bring you back for the live Q&A at the end. Okay. Big red bubble gum. Yeah, I got some cinnamon in there. I can see that as the bear throws that in there at the last second. All right. Next up, our team from Still Austin. We've got John and Brandon. Hey guys, how's it going?
Doing great.
Hey, how's it
Happy
going?
to be here.
Good. So tell us a little bit about Still Austin.
Well, feeling a little intimidated being the youngest distillery here, going last, especially with the tasting part. Still Austin has been open for about 4 years now to the public. I've been distilling for about 4 years.
Okay.
I've been a project for about 8. We were the first distillery since Prohibition opened in the city limits of Austin. That has a lot to do with all of the regulators. Turns out all the fire engineers here in the city of Austin don't get excited when you want to make a bunch of flammable liquid. So it took a little while for us from when we broke ground to get open. But once we did, we started cranking out whiskey about 4 years ago or so. And John, who's here with me, is our head distiller, who's been here for almost the whole time we've been distilling whiskey.
Yeah. John, tell us a little bit about your background. Where did you come from?
I originally grew up in New York. I worked at a distillery called Black Dirt Distillery.
Sure.
Worked-
We've had them on here before on this very flagship whiskey events.
Awesome. Right on. So I worked from there from the very beginning of when they started. I was the head distiller there. And I worked there for about 4 or 5 years. And then I was just looking to branch out and, you know, see what new. I was specifically looking for a column distillery, because Black Dirt's a, you know, column based distillery. And, you know, I found Still Austin. I really wanted to move down south. So I found Still Austin, and, you know, I've been here for, you know, going on now about 5 years.
About 5 years. Okay. That's cool. And again, this Still Austin, like I said, you know, from an outsider looking in, it just seems to come out of nowhere. You know, I don't hear from you guys. Then all of a sudden, like I said, it's all over Instagram and things like that. So tell us a little bit about how that gets going. How do you get a buzz going about, you know, a new company like that?
Oh, we're lucky to be in the city of Austin, you know, very, very hot city right now here in the United States. We're lucky to be in a really big state here in Texas. We're lucky to work at a distillery that has pretty decent capacity when it comes to production, you know, of what we're doing. We're lucky to work at a distillery that's never, we've only produced our own stuff here in Texas. So we source only Texas grains. We've only made it here at the distillery right here in Austin, all the way from grain to milling to barreling. The barrels go out into the Texas countryside to age for a while. And then, you know, we're lucky to launch with a brand almost, a little over a year ago now, I guess, that ended up resonating with the consumer out there. The musician that you all have just came out in August of last year. And we just took off here in Texas and started growing really aggressively. And luckily, we've laid down enough bourbon to be able to handle that demand.
Yeah. John, tell us a little bit about the challenges of being a Texas distillery, because we know that the weather can be definitely a challenge and things like that. So tell us a little bit about, you know, specifically the things you deal with in the state of Texas.
Yeah, so it's a blessing in disguise. It's a blessing and it's also a challenge. So, you know, for aging purposes of a young whiskey, it's incredible. And I also think for, you know, I really do think coming from New York, you know, you wouldn't touch something for 3 to 4 years, just 100%. That's what, you know, you would do. But as far as a Texas-based whiskey, when I first came down here, I was shocked when I saw people releasing 1-year-old whiskeys. It was shocking to me. But you really, truly can produce a high quality premium whiskey at a year, let alone when musicians at 2.5 years old, you're producing a really good whiskey at, you know, still arguably a young age. You know, now the challenges are, you know, what are the limitations? You know, how long can you actually produce a whiskey for, or how long can you age a whiskey for? And I've always said I love the challenge. I really enjoy that, and I think that you can do it for a very long time, especially using our techniques. We practice a technique called élevage, and this is a Nancy Fraley technique that's raising your barrels from birth to maturity. So in that technique is slow water reduction. So when these barrels hit 2 years old, and our barrel entry proof right now for our bourbon is 118 proof. So when they're 2 years old, we'll open up every single barrel every single month, and we'll add about 3 liters of water to them. And it's about a 4 to 6 month process. And what you're doing is you're reducing the proof, and you're extracting different flavors out of that wood, you know, as you're doing it. So 114 to 125 proof, you're getting a lot of those alcohol soluble sugars, a lot of more of those wood forward notes. And then from 114 below, say 114 to 100, you're getting a lot of more of those water soluble sugar notes. So a lot more of those sweet characteristics, you know, your vanilla, your toffee, your caramel, all of that. So that's where I really feel like I have that ability to make a bourbon last, or whiskey last a very extended period of time in Texas. and having that proof at a lower proof point, at 118 proof, giving it a little bit more time to age. But I really think slow water reduction for us is the key to combating that Texas heat.
Harnessing the beast.
Yeah, harnessing the beast for sure. But it's a
Yeah.
great challenge. It really is. I think it's one of the best aging climates in the country for sure. I really
Okay.
do.
Tell us a little bit about visiting the distillery, because our folks do like to travel. They do like to visit distilleries, and let's see if we can get Still Austin on their bucket list. What's it like?
Well, so like I mentioned, we're very close to downtown Austin. We're here in the actual city limits of Austin. I mean, we have a lot of great distilleries in this area, but we're lucky to be pretty close to downtown. So we're about 5 miles south, about either a 10-minute drive or a 60-minute drive, depending on what time of day you
Yeah.
try and
Traffic.
If you're on I-35 or not.
traffic from downtown is a little tough sometimes here in Austin. But we've really been working hard over the past few years on creating Whiskey Disneyland over here. We give tours pretty much every day, every hour here while we're open here at the distillery. We have a whole tasting room and cocktails as well. We have an event space here. We're really just trying to open our arms to the city of Austin and get people to have fun. We do lots of reoccurring events, live music, things like that. I mean, obviously with our flagship bourbon being called the musician, we try and embrace the spirit of Austin, pun definitely intended, as much as we can. So we do a lot of that here at the distillery.
All right. So John, tell us about this whiskey itself. The musician, you guys make it. So tell us, whatever you can, grain bill, grains you want to talk about, anything you want to talk about the whiskey, we'd love to hear it.
Sure. So the whiskey is or the bourbon is a 70% white corn, 25% Prosecco rye, 5% malted barley.
Okay.
It is distilled off of a 42-foot continuous column still from Forsyths, 18-inch in diameter. And her name is Nancy from the Attack of the 50-Foot Woman. I
like that.
Yeah. It's like what Brandon was saying. Everything is grain to glass, Texas grains only, or what we use for all of our mash bills.
Mm-hmm.
It's aged about 2.5 years in a char 3 barrel.
Char 3 barrel. Okay. All right. Well, folks, let's do some nosing here and share those nosing notes. And John, tell us a little bit about what we should expect as we're going to be getting ready to nose and taste this whiskey.
Yeah, so we're at 98.4 proof for our whiskey. When I said I was doing that slow water reduction process, it starts at 118.
Okay.
And I pretty much go from 118, for argument's sake, 114 to 110 to 108 to 104 in that 4 to 6 month process. I pretty much let it sit at 102 proof, 104 proof before it gets bottled, and then it's at 98.4 when it gets dumped at 102 to 104, and then when it's bottled, it's at 98.4. But on the nose, I feel like it's very fruit forward. It's very sweet. A lot of tropical fruit. I get a lot of pineapple or banana and cherry. Some sweet notes like marshmallow. On the palate is when I really feel like the rye comes through. Some brown butter. You're getting that, vanilla tones, vanilla custard even. Some cinnamon.
Okay. Tim, of course, has got his tasting notes here. Peanut shells, like pizza place where you toss them on the floor. Grass hay, field, cedar, and white grape juice. Any other on the nose? I'm getting when you said pineapple, that one hit for me. I like that. And that's kind of rare. You don't get that a whole lot, but I definitely pick up a little bit.
I feel like we got a lot of fruit forward notes from our yeast. We use a standard like American dry whiskey yeast, but I've always felt when it's coming off of the column, it's very fruit forward. And I feel like the yeast has a lot to do with that.
Makes sense. Last one of the night. Cheers, gang.
Cheers.
Oh yeah. Yeah, that's really good. Definitely, again, fruity on the taste. Carrie was coming up with a fruit cookie pizza, fruit sweet cookie. Interesting. On the nose there, I assume, as we just did the taste. But yeah, I definitely get fruit forward on that. Very, very sweet. Again, nice finish. Warms up nicely. Sticks with you. Comes across a little. You get some of the oak taste on there that you're looking for. So that's certainly pleasant, and probably a little tobacco in there. So what about you guys? What are you guys thinking as you taste this one? The Robinsons are talking it over. Anything else?
It's worth noting too, people ask about the 0.4 on the proof there. And as I'm sure Amanda can attest to, when you're tasting with Nancy Fraley, you do it in very tight increments, and she'll be like, this, 0.2 is garbage and 0.4 is perfect, and that's
Really
very precise with these sorts of things. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
The intimidating thing with her is always, when you both taste the sip or whatever, and she says, well, what do you think?
Yeah.
Right.
Well, you tell me what you think first.
I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah. I saw the bear type, and he came up with a light maple flavor fading to spice. That's good. Yeah. Really, really good stuff. Mr. Bill? Mr. Bill's tasting it. He'll give us the yes or no in a second here.
Bizarrely different,
There you go.
and not in a bad way either.
Okay. I think that's pretty good. It's hard to read Mr. Bill's scale, but I believe
I
that's
like
pretty
it.
good. Okay. There you go. That's what you're looking for. That's the note. Very good. Well, again, thank you guys for joining us as well. We always like to leave about 15 minutes at the end where we can have the audience ask any questions. So at this time, gang, you can open up the mics and feel free to ask away. You can ask any of the people individually, or you can ask collectively as the group if that's a question that you'd like to ask. What do you have here, folks?
I have a question for Victoria. So I don't know if you realize we have a bit of a history here in St. Louis with so Jack Daniel's was distilled here for several years because Tennessee put prohibition in place long before the rest of the United States. And so we actually probably have some of your relatives here. Steve, you may have met him, but I can't remember his great nephew.
A lot of my relatives there.
Yeah.
Yeah. I used to work for one of the large liquor retailers here, and there's a gentleman here, and I tried to find his card after you started talking. I didn't have time to find it, so I can't remember his name. But he's a great nephew of Nearest Green, and they actually did a exhibit here at the St. Louis History Museum some years back, and they provided some family pictures of, with Nearest Green and stuff like that. And
is his name Donnell? Is his name Donnell, Jim?
Yes, that's him.
Yeah.
Yeah, we were supposed to do a single barrel pick of Nearest, my Uncle Nearest, and COVID kind of killed the whole thing because him and his sister were going to come in and do a whole presentation for us for the store to kind of make it special for us. But hopefully with Steve and I's new venture here that we're going to get to do, that we can incorporate them. But yeah, it was always kind of fun here working in the store, and people come in, I get to talk about the product, and I would point out how the connection between the family in St. Louis with Jack Daniel's Distillery moving to St. Louis for 12 years or whatever it was.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Great history here for sure. All right. What else do you guys want to know?
I've got one for Amanda.
Okay.
Do you lauter or do you ferment on grain?
So we have what we call our mash tun, and we never ferment on grain. So our goal is to extract the sugar. We do 2 separate waters. Traditionally in Scotland, they do 3 waters.
Mm-hmm.
So that's even more time consuming, but it's a 6 to 8 hour process where we extract the sugar from the malted barley. Our ratio is 70% middles, 20% husks, and 10% flour. So in that mashing time, if you have too much flour in your ratio of the grist, it can turn into a gluey paste. So we're very consistent with that. And then once we strain out the sugary water, it's called wort. And that's what we move into fermentation tanks to pitch the yeast.
Yeah, that's what picked my ears up when I heard mash tun, and I figured, okay, all right, great, thank you.
Hey,
What else?
hey, John, do you guys have to use special barrels there? I know a couple distillers in Texas have to use some, I guess, thicker staves in their barrels because of the pressure from the heat. They've had some barrels bursting. You have that issue in Austin?
We've had, honestly, probably only like 2 or 3 that did that, but we just used a standard char 3 barrel from Independent Stave, standard 53 gallon. But I have seen that. I have seen it like bow out a little bit from that heat, but only like 2 or 3 barrels.
Okay. 2 or 3. That's tragic though. You don't want that to happen. You hate wasted whiskey. Yeah. That's
Yeah.
What else? What else do you guys want to know? Well, you're still thinking. I also want to put a plug in. Don't forget, we've got the All-Star Edition. We, of course, been doing this over a year now. And the first year's worth of events, we, of course, had 48 distilleries on these events. And we let everyone who ever participated, if you bought a ticket, you got to vote which ones were your favorite. And of course, we have 13 different distilleries. There was 12, but there was one that had a conflict that said no at first. We asked someone else, and then they came back and said yes. So we said, well, we'll include you. So we got 13 distilleries. Ticket sales close out tomorrow, actually, at noon. So, but we've got events left. One ticket gets you all 3 dates, 12/2, 12/9, 12/16. Don't worry, if you got a holiday party going on, you're going to miss one of those. Of course, we record these, put them on YouTube. You can watch and follow along if you're going to miss one of them. So please be a part of that. We're close to selling out. We'd love to make sure that we sell the All-Star events out. So check that out. Any other questions?
Yeah, I wanted to comment. I wanted to tell Victoria thanks a lot because keeping the horses and the farm right, I can at least get my wife interested because she hates whiskey. She likes vodka and other things, but she hates whiskey. So I
get the bear to visit now. Yes.
So I also wanted to know, how long has Amanda been with Virginia? Oh, sorry.
Bring her down, and she will enjoy the horses, and she will enjoy the history.
Okay, that sounds great.
Go ahead.
Amanda, how long have you been with Virginia?
Been there for 6.5 years, so I am the oldest employee by duration since our first master distiller, and a lot of the team were from Scotland. They were our mentors who came over, so I stayed around. So yeah, it's been a fun 6.5 years.
Very cool.
I wanted to say thanks to everybody because through this I've experienced a lot of stuff that I've never had before, but this particular one, there's 2 out of the 4 I've had before. And as far as Virginia, I had one of my worst experiences with your product. I'm pretty hardcore, so I'll just let it fly. And it was a barrel pick about 3 or 4 years ago from a whiskey store that I regular, and the owner actually picked it. And some barrels I just don't feel should ever be sent out. They should just be blended because they are terrible. And I apologize because I hadn't revisited your product, but I really liked what I tasted tonight. And it actually, I kept a wall of these. So I gave away samples and I had trouble having people take it. And so like I said, I want to apologize because I hadn't revisited because I always say I'm going to at least try things a couple of times. And
there you go.
My bad.
There you
go. Don't apologize. Well, we appreciate you being
the bear is back. That's your new social media campaign. The bear is back.
Well, I will tell you, we didn't release our single malt until April 2020. So whatever you had from that pick was a distillate mixed. It would be an American blended malt.
It was a red label, I believe. I believe it was red label. I'll have to see if I can find. Well, you know what? The store still has it.
Okay, you can send me a picture because I'm very curious. I don't know of any red labels.
I might be wrong. I go through a lot of bottles, but
imagine this whole thing being wrong.
It might not even been your distillery, Amanda.
There are a couple Virginia distilleries, but I'm curious. So
no, it has the V on the label and everything else. It might be black.
Sure,
I'll find the bottle.
Like the old Saturday Night Live skit with the Emily Littell. Oh, never mind. good.
No,
good. Okay.
I trust you.
Okay, I'm sure he's got it down. All right. What? Anything else you guys want to know?
Yeah, I had a question for Victoria. Can you talk a little bit about the transition from going from source product to distilled? Because that's a big change for you guys, I would assume.
It will be a big change. Hopefully, you guys will never know the difference. That is our goal anyway. We released the master blend, the master blend edition on Juneteenth of this year. And in that expression is some of our 4-year-old whiskey. Our whiskey that we laid down is
In-house.
included in that. Our 4-year-old is absolutely delicious. So I am hoping and trusting that when it reaches 7, it will be even better. So the transition for us, our hope is just location, that the consumer will never know the difference. And if you do, it should be better, not the other way around.
Gotcha.
What is your capacity to produce right now to keep up with that? Like,
It's difficult to keep up with it because right now, we source and we also have a third partner who helps us to bottle, but we're not their only customer. So it's a little bit of a challenge, but we also bottle at our own distillery.
Mhm.
So we bring the whiskey, our source product comes to our distillery and we are bottling there. So we're managing quite well, to be honest. We have some really good folks on our team, and so they're keeping up quite well.
That's
it's a good problem to have.
Yeah.
It is a good problem to have.
Yeah. Anything else for our team here? Anybody?
Yeah, I had a question for Scott from Highwire. Are you doing any other varietals of corn? Are you experimenting with any of the blue corns or anything other than that?
Yeah, we are. We're actually, I mentioned earlier, we went to Oaxaca a couple of years ago and we pulled some blue corn out of Oaxaca. We aren't planting that, the indigenous folks who grow that, it's in their families or whatever. So we buy that corn from them. We bought we went down and harvested some red corn from outside of Puerto Escondido, which is a variety called Tuxpaño, which is sort of similar to southeastern dent corn. So we've distilled that. We've also done some work with a Georgia blue corn out of Georgia here in the US. And we did a grow out for seed 2 years ago, I guess it was. And a hurricane hit our field and wiped it completely out. So we've had to start back over again.
Terrible.
So, but we also work with rye. We have a delicious rye and it's 100% raw rye and we're using a Bruzzi right here. So we're doing, we've made single malt. We've kind of played around in a bunch of different areas. So, but corn is our first love. So
How is your cornbread game with that Jimmy Red?
I think it makes great cornbread. It makes better cornbread than grits, to be honest, I think. And we just released a smoked version. We had a guy up in Madisonville, Tennessee named Alan Benton who does delicious bacon and hams. And he smoked some of our Jimmy Red in his smokehouse. And it tastes like a mezcal, basically, in the white dog form. It's still in barrels, but I will say I pulled a little bit of that meal when it came across and made cornbread out of that. And it was like right on time. So, yeah.
Yeah, we know a guy here that experiments with a different corn and makes the cornbread, and he's pretty good at that.
Again, that's Gary from Wood Hat. So, yeah.
Oh yeah.
That's a guy you definitely got to talk to. You can call
Yeah.
Gary Heingartner up from Wood Hat, and you'll set aside some time because you start talking corn. It's amazing, but he's using corn to work on the cure for cancer. So wait till you get to know this guy. So the blue corns, the purple corns, have antioxidants, and he's concentrating the antioxidants out of there and working with the University of Missouri to see if there's anything there. So I don't know. It's kind of cool to think about a distiller working on the cure for cancer, but he's trying. So amazing guy, 77 years old, by the way. Not a young guy. So,
and I may have missed this from Still Austin for John. the last time I was down there, I think you guys were doing, it wasn't a whole lot, but what's your capacity now? What are you guys putting out as far as barrels?
So we recently are just finishing out our capacity to go 24 hours. So going on starting in January, we'll be able to produce about 5,000 barrels a year.
Pretty sweet.
So, and you
Jeez.
guys you were working on the expansion of some rick houses. Did you guys complete that, and are you still working on that?
Yeah, we have plenty of room for barrel warehouses at this point. Plenty of room.
Yeah, they wouldn't give me the location. I told them I wouldn't bring a drill, but they still wouldn't give me the location.
It's a good idea. It's a good idea.
It's hard to find. I've not met one person in Texas who actually is familiar with the town that our barrels are currently located in, because it's so small.
Really? That's
Yeah.
cool.
Challenge accepted.
But we have a lot of capacity, so we're good to go.
Well, on that note, I want to say thank you to our guests today. So Amanda, Victoria, Scott, John, and Brandon. Let's give them a round of applause, gang. Appreciate you guys. Thank you for coming out, allowing us to taste some great whiskey, learn about your company as well as yourself. Great stuff. We do like to keep these to an hour and a half, so we don't like to impinge on anybody's time. So we're going to go ahead and sign off. I do stick around. Anybody can stick around that would like to just chat, talk whiskey. I certainly will do that. But anybody who wants to go, we understand. And we'll say goodbye for now and turn off that recorders. Thanks, guys. See
Have a
ya.
good one. Thank you,
Thank
guys.
you.
Guys,
Bye.
thanks for having me.
Absolutely.